first time James Brown came on the Letterman show, that was just like the ultimate nutsack for all of us musicians on stage. Because here's a guy who's, first of all, he's a legend. And then to find out why he's a legend is to play with him. And he whipped this band into shape. We had a great band to begin with. We had Hiram Bullock, Steve Jordan, Paul Schaefer. And he brought his two horn players, St. Clair Pinckney and Holly Ferris, to provide the horns, because we were just a quartet. We were just a rhythm section on the first Letterman show back in 1982 when it started. And we count the tune off, and before he starts singing and moving, the tune is one thing. It's already grooving. But when he begins to be doing the James Brown thing, that is when he becomes like the drum. You know how in a band, like the drummer is sort of like the center of the groove, and you have to really, if everybody adheres to his feel, then you've got a really tight unit. Well, he's the drummer's drummer, just by his body moves alone, because it's so intense, and he has this, he was so sure of who he was. There was no doubt about who he was, and that he had the ability to establish a groove just by moving, And it was just an incredible thing that really just gelled everybody together really well. So that was like the #1 highlight, as far as that show goes.
When I first started getting into James Brown as a kid, obviously I was listening, it was just the overall thing, whatever that was. The sound, the intensity, I was drawn into that. And of course, the showmanship. I got to see James Brown when I was a kid, in the early 80s, so, he still had a lot of vim and vigor, he was still hungry. He was performing like an angry man, I remember hearing Soul Power for the first time, and even as a kid, I remember thinking, this is a little different from most of the other James Brown records that I've heard. This bass player on here is really, really good, And then I heard Superbad, and it's the same thing. And there was always these handful of James Brown records where I thought this bass player or this whole band is a little different from most of these other James Brown records. Because I'd heard records like, Payback got played a lot in my house, that whole album. All the JB's records like Doing It to Death and Give Me Some More and Pass the Peas and stuff like that, Get on the Good Foot, Make It Funky. And then all of the 60s stuff like Let Yourself Go, Get It Together, Cold Sweat. All those records were great, but just this one little chunk, Soul Power, Sex Machine, Superbad, Get Involved, and Talking Loud and Saying Nothing. And of course, later on in life, I found out that was Bootsy. And I thought, it makes sense now. Because I was a fan of Bootsy's Rubber Band as a kid, not knowing that he played with James Brown. And, I've still never met Bootsy. I don't know why that's never happened, but our paths have to cross at some point. He's got to know what he means to me.
That whole era was so magical. It was, it was so creative, self-expression, everything was going on in that time. And it's so amazing because we got a chance to see that, and not only see it, be a part of it. Sometimes you have to be led, you have to be directed, without being preached to, without saying you better do this or you gotta do this. It ain't like you gotta do anything. This is like, bam, check this out, y'all. If it feels good to you, if it makes sense to you, take it and do something else with it. Funk away, baby.